A group of 5 torpedo bombers led by Charles Taylor was assigned navigation problem number 1. It was a navigation training flight consisting of bombing and general navigation. The flight plan was to head due east from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, then turning north, and finally looping back west to complete their training exercise. After accomplishing the bombing runs at Hens and Chicken Shoals, all 5 of the aircraft disappeared with no traces while returning to Lauderdale. Within minutes of learning of the squadron's predicament, 2 flying boats were dispatched from Naval Air Station Banana River in Florida, carrying rescue equipment. Less than half an hour after takeoff, one of the rescue team radioed the tower that they were nearing the bomber's last assumed position. Unfortunately, that was the last of what we heard from them, as even the rescue team mysteriously vanished into thin air. In a manner reminiscent of an eerie enigma, around 50 ships and 20 aircraft reportedly vanished without a trace within a wide area of water over the past century, sparking a captivating mystery which fooled the world, despite evidence suggesting that it might have been an illusion all along. Following series of incidents around the area between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, an article was published in October 1952 by a magazine focusing in paranormal, which outlined the specific area as a watery triangle. The mystery begins to unravel right from its inception, as there was no research or supporting evidence to justify the specific choice of the triangular shape or the area in question. The conundrum was further glorified by a 1964 issue of the American pulp fiction magazine Argosy, which featured an article that was captioned, "Lost in the Bermuda Triangle." The article inside revisited many of the same disappearances mentioned in Sand's earlier publication, but with a highly embellished narrative, complete with fictitious quotes and alarming suppositions, which is exactly what you'd expect from a magazine predominantly about fiction. While the nautical disappearances did take place, without these fictional embellishments, they would have been recorded in history as just another incident in the North Atlantic Ocean, rather than the eerie mystery that we grew up with. Addressing the tragedy of Flight 19, which is one of the most renowned incidents in the Bermuda Triangle, all 14 naval aviators on the flight were lost, along with all 13 crew members of 2 flying boats that subsequently launched from Banana River to search for them. The pilots were familiar with the flight plan, as it was supposed to be their final practice before graduation. The flight leader Charles Taylor had about 2,500 flying hours, while his trainee pilots each had 300 total and 60 flight hours in the bomber. The exercise consisted of 3 legs, with the 4th leg being the return to Lauderdale after reaching the Florida coast. Tragedy started unfolding when fellow Navy pilot Robert Cox received a radio transmission from an unidentified member. The radio transmission was repeatedly asking for compass reading from Captain Edward Powers, and these conversations took place.
I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn.
This is FT-74, plane or boat calling Powers. Please identify yourself so someone can help you.
FT-28, this is FT-74. What is your trouble? Both of my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale.
FT-28, it seems that you are lost. Keep the sun on your port wing and fly north up the coast to Fort Lauderdale. FT-28, are you equipped with IFF transmitter? We'd like to triangulate your position.
We're heading 30 degrees for 45 minutes. Then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico.
FT-28, I can't pick up the IFF. Broadcast on 4805 kHz. FT-28, I can't pick up the IFF. Broadcast on 3000 kHz.
I cannot switch frequencies. I must keep my planes intact.
FT-28, turn on the IFF transmitter if you have one.
Change course to 90 degrees for 10 minutes. Damn it, if we could just fly west we would get home. Head west, damn it. We'll fly 270 degrees west until landfall or we're running out of gas. Holding 270, we didn't fly far enough east. We may as well just turn around and fly east again. All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together.
As it became imminent that the flight was lost, all available assets were alerted. When darkness fell, 2 Martin PBM flying boats were redirected to conduct square pattern searches in the area, which was pinpointed as the possible crash site of Flight 19. Both the flying boats took off from Air Station Banana River at 1927, called in a routine radio message, and was never heard from again. While the vanishing of Flight 19 and 2 rescue planes would make for a compelling story, that's far from what actually happened. The low-level bombing practice on hens and chicken shoals was confirmed to have been carried out as about 3 p.m. A pilot requested and was given permission to drop his last bomb. It was 40 minutes after receiving the bombing clearance that Robert Cox intercepted an unidentified transmission. Powers responding that they must have gotten lost after that last turn indicates that the group took the crucial turn 67 miles after bombing hens and chicken shoals. The precise moment when things began to unravel remains unknown, but as they headed toward the Grand Bahamas, their compasses inexplicably malfunctioned. This specific radio transmission reveals that Taylor mistook the islands of the Bahamas for those in the Florida Keys, a mistake that would have been impossible given their actual location. On the surface, it seems implausible that an experienced captain with 2,500 flight hours could get confused during a routine exercise, but considering Taylor had previously been a flight instructor at the Naval Air Station in Miami where training flights often navigated the Florida Keys, the confusion becomes more understandable. Adding the fact that their compasses were malfunctioning, which stripped them of their sense of direction, it might have been the reason behind confusion. Strongly believing they were in the Florida Keys, Taylor led the team further north in an attempt to verify their location. This specific radio transmission reveals that the unidentified crew member was right on the money, but it speculated that strict military discipline prevented them from splitting up and heading west. Taylor, who was convinced that heading west would lead them into the Gulf of Mexico, redirected his team east, but in reality, turning west would have saved their lives. This decision resulted in the group heading further northeast, taking them deeper into the sea where they ultimately flew to their deaths. 2 flying boats were redirected to perform square pattern searches in the area identified as the likely crash site. 45 minutes after the rescue team's routine radio check and disappearance, the tanker SS Gaines Mills reported witnessing flames from a suspected explosion, leaping 100 feet high and burning for 10 minutes near the area designated as the potential crash site of Flight 19. A closer investigation revealed 2 significant clues following the disappearance of the rescue team. USS Solomons, which was the 13th of 50 Casablanca-class escort carriers built for the United States Navy, reported losing radar contact with an aircraft at the same position and time. Additionally, it was reported that the crash site had pool of oil sheen and aviation fuel. While no one could agree or deny on the fact that it was the grave of the rescue team, the planes themselves were known to have a fatal flaw. The PBM could hold nearly 10 tons of aviation gasoline, and its flexible fuel lines had a noted tendency to get loose in rough conditions, resulting in gasoline leakage. A 500-page report by a Navy Board of Investigation, published a few months after the planes were lost, concluded that the mariners' loss was due to a mid-air explosion. If all these details were known, why was it not blamed on Taylor but instead left as mystery? The answer lies in the details that many often overlook. Taylor was initially blamed by everyone as there was a rule of thumb at Fort Lauderdale. If a pilot ever became lost in the area, they were to fly a heading of due west, which if you look at the map, would take them back to the land. By the time the Flight 19 actually turned west, they were likely so far out to sea that they had already passed their aircraft's fuel endurance. Taylor's mother protested, arguing that the Navy was unfairly blaming him for the loss of 5 aircraft and 14 men without any physical evidence. Consequently, the report was amended by the Navy to state the cause as unknown. Another fascinating mystery revolves around Bruce Jernan and his Bonanza A-36 aircraft, which departed from Andros Island in the Bahamas, bound for Miami Beach on December 4, 1970. This incident is popular as the story of the man who survived the Bermuda Triangle. The flight path was charted from the town of Andros to Bimini and then to Miami Beach. Bruce, his dad, and a business partner were the inhabitants of the aircraft. Some 10 to 15 minutes after taking off from Andros Island, Bruce encountered a thick cloud directly in front of them. After passing over the cloud at 1,000 feet per minute, the cloud seemed to be building up underneath them at the same rate that they were ascending. The aircraft was cruising at a speed of 180 miles per hour, but somehow the cloud was able to keep up with them. After a few minutes of flying under clear skies and moving closer and closer to Bimini, they noticed a squall forming in front of them. As they approached the cloud, it looked very much like the one they had left behind. When Bruce entered the misty edges of this enormous cloud formation, bright white flashes lit up the interior of the cloud in a never-ending random pattern, which intensified over time. Moments later, an enormous cloud engulfed them, trapping the plane inside a massive donut hole formation with a 30-mile diameter opening. Bruce spotted a tunnel-like exit at the end of the cloud and pushed the engine to maximum power to escape through the cloud tunnel. The tunnel had appeared to be 10 miles long and should have taken at least 3 minutes to traverse, but it only took 3 seconds and their instrument cluster was going haywire. They felt the sensation of zero gravity and escaped the tunnel, but when they contacted Miami Air Traffic Control, their position was invisible in the radar. While they headed on same direction, the controller yelled out that he had spotted an airplane directly over Miami Beach, flying due west. The fog started to break apart, and they noticed that the navigation instruments appeared to be working again. Astonishingly, the flight took only 47 minutes, while the fastest he had ever recorded was 75 minutes. Even more perplexing, his fuel tank had 10 gallons of surplus fuel remaining that should have been burnt off, with gas receipts to prove it. Bruce's story and the books he wrote about his experience in Bermuda Triangle became a sensation among fiction consumers and further glorified the legend. But if we dive deeper into the rabbit hole of his experience, huge plot holes are observed. Most of the details in his story are either too vague or lack sufficient explanation or proof to back them up. From the outset, the takeoff time is mentioned as close to 3 p.m., which is vague and could mean anything from 2:45 to 2:59 or any time in between. The author also talks about an electric-powered clock on the panel, which included a timer that he had engaged upon takeoff, but its validity becomes questionable as the whole instrument cluster went haywire for a decent amount of time. Bruce explains of a moment when the cloud tunnel that appeared 10 miles long suddenly reduces to a mile, and instead of 3 minutes that should have taken to scale the tunnel, it only took 20 seconds. He had also pushed the engine to its full potential when they got out of the tunnel, fighting against the electric fog, which should have reduced flight time by a few minutes. There was also the mention of cloud that kept up with the 180 miles per hour cruising speed of the aircraft, which should provide heavy tailwind attributing to increased flight speed and low fuel consumption. The only proof that Bruce was able to provide was a gas receipt that showed the presence of some extra fuel that should have been burned off, but he only mentions it once and doesn't care to put further emphasis on its validity or how it was measured to confirm the surplus volume. Additionally, there's no mention of the fuel level at takeoff or any similar details that could be used to verify his claims. Instead of seeking logical explanations, he introduces other vague stories and loosely uses terms like teleportation and breaching the space-time continuum, emphasizing sensationalism over a rational search for answers, likely to sell his books. The story of the man who survived Bermuda Triangle thrives in the world of fiction, but I think it's best to take these stories with a grain of salt. When a vast area of the globe is shrouded in mystery and garners attention through popular fictional stories, hoaxes are inevitably created. One such hoax that garnered attention is the tale of Flight 914. According to the story, a Pan-American Douglas DC-4, with 54 passengers and 10 crew members disappeared without a trace on a flight from New York City to Miami on the 2nd of July 1955. After 37 years, the plane was reportedly sighted near Caracas, where it requested landing permission at the airport. Permission was granted, and the pilot allegedly asked for the current date and time, only to be shocked to learn that 37 years had passed. The pilot then forbade anyone from coming closer and took off to reach its ultimate destination, which was supposed to be Miami. The story gained its popularity from a 1985 article in the Weekly World News, a tabloid notoriously known for false stories, and that is exactly what they did with this story. The flight in question that disappeared with 64 people, including crew members, not having any contemporary sources of the incident in the press or the Civil Aeronautics Board accident reports, should debunk the story altogether. The story gained popularity for wormhole theories and was republished multiple times as news article, but the inconsistency in the details was remarkable. Few articles claim that the flight returned after 37 years, while others claim that it's 30. Even the eyewitness were different person altogether, but worst of it all was the fact that the picture of the plane used by the Weekly World News is actually a stock photograph of a DC-4, and there are no credible news reports to support the claim. While these events have been sensationalized by fiction, there are other incidents backed by visible proof that are often overlooked. A National Geographic documentary about Bermuda Triangle showcased the wreckage of a boat that went down in early 90s, which was weirdly sliced in half. If you look at general accidents or wreckage of ships, you will often find them destroyed by torpedoes, maybe a boiler room explosion, or hole in the body resulting from collision, but a ship being sliced in half won't be one of them. Of course, you can always blame it on the Curse of Bermuda Triangle, but there's a perfectly valid explanation for this scenario. To grasp the cause behind these incidents, we need to understand the concept of rogue waves and tensile strength. Simply put, rogue waves are massive, unpredictable surface waves with immense destructive power. While high and destructive waves might sound common, it wasn't until 1995 that scientists recorded the 84-foot Draupner wave, named after the incident on Draupner platform, which is a gas pipeline support complex in the North Sea. And about tensile strength, it is the maximum stress that a material can withstand while being stretched or pulled before breaking. To give an example, tensile strength is the reason why steel barbell are able to withstand heavy weight and bend, whereas a wooden pole in same scenario would snap in half. So if a ship that isn't normally built to possess high tensile strength is lifted high by rogue waves, there is a significant chance it could be snapped in half, which can be attributed to the aforementioned scenario. The stories of the Bermuda Triangle are pretty surreal in a sense that they blend mysterious disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and a rich tapestry of myth and made-up events. Since the 1964 issue of the magazine Argosy that brought Bermuda Triangle tales to the general public, readers have split into three distinct groups. Some embraced and amplified the tales, others dismissed them, while a third group took a skeptical stance, determined to debunk the mystery. Critics offered their own explanations for the mysterious events in the Bermuda Triangle, proposing theories like violent weather, the Gulf Stream, methane hydrates, rogue waves, and hexagonal air bombs as possible causes for the strange disappearances. If you ask me about the possible reason behind these disappearances, I think there's a pretty good reason that might help you understand the story with a different perspective. The island of Bermuda is the last remnant of a massive underwater volcano. As the magma cooled, it formed basalt with a high iron content, giving the island its unusual magnetic properties. In a Science Channel video, mineral prospector Nick Hutchings explored an area within the Bermuda Triangle, where he discovered a 500-foot thick layer containing 18 to 20% magnetite. If you're unfamiliar with magnetite, it's the most magnetic naturally occurring substance on Earth. It's estimated that around 500 billion tons of it surround Bermuda, which could explain the frequent compass malfunctions reported in the area. There's also agonic line, magnetic declination, and other factors that might affect the precision of a compass. When a compass, the primary tool for navigation, malfunctions, it's easy to understand how a plane or ship could veer off course, ending up in unfamiliar territories and leading to accidents in areas they were never supposed to reach. Even with some communication, inaccurate location data could lead to a total disconnect, making it almost impossible to pinpoint any wreckage. This could also explain the significant decline in disappearances within the Bermuda Triangle over the past few decades, as modern navigation no longer relies solely on the traditional magnetic compass. The last major disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle was that of a Piper PA, which vanished on the 20th of June 2005 while flying between Treasure Key Island in the Bahamas and Fort Pierce. Fast forward to 2024, and the story of Bermuda Triangle exists solely as a legend. A data from shipping publication showed that 1.8% of all vessels everywhere in the world have some form of casualty, including mysterious disappearances. And out of 8,634 boats that passed through the Bermuda Triangle in 2021, there were only 2 casualties, which is 90 times lower than the global average. This claim was further backed by Michael Shermer, an American science writer and historian, who explained that if Bermuda Triangle really was the dangerous place that people claim to be, the insurance companies would know.
But here's our triangle.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be
There's
a lot
nothing
going on there,
Right.
right? In other words, the number of accidents here in the Bermuda Triangle doesn't even reach this level of the Bay of Bengal.
Right.
And you know who knows the statistics? Insurance companies.
Right. If there was something happening, the insurance companies would 100 billion trillion % make you pay more.
All in all, Bermuda Triangle's mystery is a fiction enjoyed by many, and for good reason. It's safe to say that crossing the Atlantic anywhere would be just as dangerous as going through the Bermuda Triangle, and the only thing you would see disappearing is the money inside your pocket. If all else fails, you can always increase the area and blame it on the bigger triangle.